Welcome back to Prophecy of Cinema. In this series, we look at classic stories, books, and films that warned us about the direction that the world might be heading, and sometimes they were more accurate than we ever imagined. Today, we're diving back into The Running Man, not just the two movie versions, but the original novel by Stephen King. Specifically, we're looking at one of its boldest predictions. A United States transformed into a full-blown surveillance state where the government watches everything that you do. With recent events echoing this story, could this eventuality be coming to our world soon? And what would be the consequences?
You're one of the cops who locked up all my friends, burned my songs. People like you took this country and turned it into a jail.
In the Running Man novel, citizens live under constant surveillance. Every movement and every word tracked and logged by the state. Cameras are everywhere. And in the film, we open on a scene of protests and riots. The poor are starving, and the government responds with a military crackdown. Here, protest isn't just discouraged, it's criminalized. Now, to people in the 1980s, that may have sounded like a far-off dystopia, but now? It's starting to feel like something that we might see coming in the next few years. Prophetic theme number 3, total surveillance. Over the last decade or so, we've all just come to accept that our data is being tracked. Everything we do on a computer, everything we type into our phone, all of our conversations, every location we visit, everything we buy, it's all being tracked, guys. Like, they've just got all this information on us in some data center somewhere in the world. And while corporations have been happily profiting from all of this data collection, selling to other companies and making billions of dollars, governments are now wanting to get in on it too. The Trump administration has reportedly accelerated the expansion of its own national data infrastructure, quietly streamlining data collection across federal agencies. Publicly, it's sold as modernization, but behind the scenes, it looks like something much darker: the construction of a centralized citizen profiling system. We all know that they've been watching us this whole time, but how long is it before it's not just watching anymore? If everything you do online, your browsing, your purchases, health records, location, political leanings, can all be analyzed and cross-referenced, that's not just a database, that's a control grid. And in the hands of any authoritarian regime, it becomes a weapon. A silent threat that says, "We know who you are, and we know what you think." Under that kind of surveillance, who would dare sign a petition or speak out or show up to a protest? And that's the true danger, not just the loss of our privacy, but the destruction of our courage itself. The First Amendment guarantees us the right to protest, and it was put in there by our founding fathers because they knew that unchecked power tends towards corruption eventually. Protest isn't a rebellion, it's supposed to be accountability for the powerful. It's how we make change without having to resort to violence. But today, certain factions, certain news organizations are starting to call all protesters criminals, traitors, and rioters. It's usually rioters. They want to exaggerate the amount of rioters so they can paint the entire protest as being bad, even though it was for a good reason, but they don't talk about that. They talk about the rioters. And it's disappointing for me to have to say this, but even some close friends of mine have told me that they don't like protesters. But what happens if the protest was ever made outlawed? Don't think that that can't happen. In an autocratic, technocratic future where the government sees all and knows all, they have enough info on all of us to know if you're thinking about protesting their wrongdoings before you even decide to do it. And what happens when these things get you flagged in their database? That being possible is no longer in the realm of science fiction. That's possible now. We already have facial recognition, AI surveillance, predictive algorithms, and private companies like Palantir who have been collecting all of this information from different databases and are now handing it over to the government. The result is the government is now gaining more and more of a steady stream of behavioral data on all of us as individuals, which could in turn give them leverage over the public like never before. And in the wrong hands of an overreaching system, they could use this information to label all dissenters as enemies of the state. Now, they might not necessarily punish people with jail time for this. It would start instead with exclusion. Imagine that because you're in their database, you start losing jobs, or you're blocked from housing or travel accommodations. In this type of scenario, it starts with a sort of soft totalitarianism enforced by fear. And once that infrastructure is built, freedom doesn't just vanish overnight, it starts to become conditional.
You're one of the cops who locked up all my friends, burned my songs. People like you took this country and turned it into a jail.
Let me paint a picture for you for how we might end up further evolving ourselves into a Running Man type of future. Imagine a scenario where those in power say, "Did you say the right thing about the government? Did you say something nice about your dear leader, your authoritarian president? Well, congratulations, you are a good citizen and you get more freedom points." But for those that criticize the regime, maybe you made some negative social media posts and talked about how wrong this was, or you made a certain amount of YouTube videos criticizing them, well, you lose your freedom points. You're a bad citizen. No policing this necessary, because everyone in society is going to police it. See, the danger of all this data collection is that eventually it could be used to create a digital caste system where obedience to the empire is rewarded and defiance is punished. You see, surveillance started off cute and fun. So what? I'm not saying anything bad. What are they going to do to me? Surveillance here isn't just external cameras recording you and collecting your data online. It's worse than that. It ends up becoming everyone around you, friends and family, subtly peer pressuring you into conformity. And then overtly. We've seen this portrayed in the Black Mirror episode Nosedive. The premise? Everyone's social credit score determines their access to housing, jobs, and services. And this is relevant because it mirrors China's real-life social credit system, where they essentially get freedom points for being loyal to the regime. And of course, we've seen this type of scenario prophesized in 1984 by George Orwell. 1984 was the original blueprint for totalitarian surveillance. Citizens here are watched by telescreens, giant TVs that can watch you inside your home. Language is controlled, and people have to attend mandatory group thought rallies where they are asked to channel their anger at the enemies of the regime, and any form of dissent towards this is criminalized. Now, 1984 was a sort of a worst-case scenario of how a technologically advanced dictatorship could take it about as far as you could go with control of the population, but 1984 was a direct ancestor of some of the Running Man's themes. This concept that Big Brother is watching you, it's something that's slowly moving out of the realm of science fiction, and it's now sneaking up on all of us. And the worst thing is, almost nobody seems to be noticing or caring enough about it. But this could be really a problem. This could be a problem, guys. It's called the salami slicing effect, where you slowly chisel away at somebody's freedoms. Nobody notices when one or two slices of salami are gone, but after a couple of years of slicing salami, suddenly you're out of salami. And on a personal note, this is why I've been to 3 protests this year, and I plan to keep going to more of them for as long as I still can, because one of the Running Man's themes was how it portrayed control disguised as protection, and how surveillance would be sold to us as a way to keep us safe, but in reality, it's a way to keep us all in line.
Rust.
Finally, can we do anything to prevent the rise of a total surveillance state like in The Running Man? Personally, I believe that we're living in one of the most important turning points in history, caught between a future that certain sci-fi films warned us about and an unfolding chain of events that could totally take us directly there. That means that our actions now are crucial in shaping the kind of future that we not only want, but need to live in. It's a necessity. And I believe one of the most powerful tools that we still have is the protest. Most people assume that the era in United States history with the most protests must have been the 1960s during the Civil Rights era. But that's not true. The time period with the most protests is happening right now. From Black Lives Matter to climate marches to workers' strikes to student walkouts, this is the most activated generation in modern history. And yet, many still say protesting does nothing. But that's what the control structure wants you to believe. That's how pacification works. And just like those people who used to say that science fiction stories were silly and absurd, those kind of statements remind me of the same people that 35, 40, 50 years ago were saying that these science fiction stories were absurd and ridiculous and would discount them. And now they're coming true. So don't listen to those people. Historically, they were always wrong. And here's a fact that you won't hear on mainstream media. Political scientists have found that when just 3.5% of a nation's population engaged in sustained protest, a substantial political change becomes inevitable. And that's why media outlets like Fox News work so hard to change the subject, dismissing protests as riots, blaming the protesters, or spinning alternate narratives altogether, because they know how powerful the protest actually is. In the next episode of Prophecy of Cinema, we continue our exploration of the Running Man's predictions and focus on perhaps its wildest prediction, that the US economy would collapse sometime soon. Could this be possible? Could the US dollar become so devalued that it becomes essentially useless? Historically, this has happened before, but could it be coming here? And what would happen to the population of millions left broke and desperate? Do recent events hint that this is coming? Tune in to the next episode to find out. And it's not just the Running Man. Every passing day, classic science fiction stories are starting to become more and more of our reality, and people are starting to notice that. So that's one of the reasons that I wanted to create this series, so that we could explore why this is happening and is there anything we can do about it. I want to cover movies like They Live, RoboCop, Handmaid's Tale, V for Vendetta, Starship Troopers, Animal Farm. I could go on. In other news, so I have sort of a big announcement to make. If you were subscribed to this channel, you may have noticed that I have not put out a video here in a very long time. Like 14, 15, 16 months I have not put out a video. And that's because during that time, I wrote my own science fiction story. It's called The New World Project, and it's my very first novel. And I'm very excited about it, and I'm excited to tell you guys all about it as we move along. I had this idea in a dream. I literally had this idea in a dream in March of 2024, and I suddenly just got struck by lightning, and I realized I just have to write this. And so I dropped everything I was doing, and here we are a year and a half later or more, and I've got a book in my hand, and I'm telling you about it. And I didn't expect that to happen, but here we are. So I hope that you will like, subscribe, and follow this channel and listen in these little after credit snippets or whatever we're going to call this, and I'll tell you more about the book briefly. I'll give you the whole plot and the whole spiel and tell you all about it, and hope to sell it on this channel eventually when we reach a certain subscriber count or whatever. You know, if that works out, we'll see. Anyway, I hope that you like, subscribe, and all that, and I hope to see you in our sci-fi future here on this channel.